Willard and Dibs, so thankful you're with us, and we're always thankful when we get a chance to have this gentleman on. Jomboy Media, Chris Rose Rotation Podcast, and Fox and MLB Network through the years for sure as well. Chris Rose joins us now live. Hey, my man, what's going on?
Doing fine, guys. How are you?
We're doing great. We're all sort of curious, even though, this is like we're moonlighting in terms of caring about the Browns, but this Deshaun Watson situation certainly has our attention. What's the larger thing at play here, if there is one? What's going on?
Oh, boy. It's a good question. Yeah, I think it's really confusing, unfortunately, for a lot of people. And maybe even the Browns to some degree, because, 2 weeks ago, Watson missed practice basically the entire week. This is before the Ravens game. And there were a lot of people who thought that he was starting. And Sunday morning, he goes out on the field, really didn't throw many passes, kind of lobbed a couple. And they were like, nope, not doing it. So they had Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the rookie fifth rounder out of UCLA, start on a few hours' notice. And it went pretty much as you expect. And so they were like, okay, well, listen, it's a divisional loss. That kind of sucks. But 2-2 through 4 games, you have the bye week, he'll be ready to go. And he's not ready to go. And now who knows how long they're looking at. But they're going to start P.J. Walker this weekend. And, he's got 7 starts under his belt. Interestingly enough, last year when, the Panthers changed out their head coach, it was now Niners defensive coordinator Steve Wilks who gave him his shot. And he did okay. I mean, he's kind of between a second and a third string quarterback, I think, at best. And going against, in my opinion, the best team in the league. And at this point, I think there's a substantial difference between the Niners and the Eagles. It's not ideal. It certainly isn't great when you're missing your Pro Bowl left guard, Joel Bitonio, and you've already lost your arguably the best running back in the league in Nick Chubb. It's basically, I'm begging for safety, guys, at this point on Sunday as a Browns fan.
Yeah, you sound pretty downtrodden, Chris. I mean, if you're looking at it from the Cleveland side, what do you pin your hopes on in terms of offensive anything?
Well, it's been an uphill battle anyway, right? Even if they have been somewhat healthy outside of Chubb, which they really haven't been. I mean, it hasn't been a good year, and they haven't played well offensively. So the hope is that the defense kind of snaps back into form after getting blasted by Baltimore a couple weeks ago, that maybe they can force a couple turnovers. That and weather are the great equalizers when there's such a huge disparity between the teams. But the Niners don't really turn it over very much either. So that would be kind of out of character for them. So it's just, you hope that you make it through, that you don't expect to win, and you hope that the Niners take care of business against the Bengals and the Ravens out by the Bay when they come calling, and that hopefully Watson can get back to this thing and they start winning games after this one. It's not a great shot. But the Niners will lose to somebody, so maybe it'll be this weekend.
Chris Rose. See, here we were hoping that maybe they wouldn't, Chris. Believe it or not a lot of it, but there's a tiny bit of 17-0 type talk that's already starting. They've looked this good, but focus further on this particular weekend, because among all the sort of Browns followers we've talked to, Chris, they all sound like you do. Like this is a fait accompli. But the defense is so good. What if you just spotlight that and answer it that way? What kind of problems could this defense cause for the 49ers?
Well, I mean, first of all, the front four is really good. And Jim Schwartz, their new defensive coordinator, has made a tremendous amount of difference in this team. They have severely upgraded that front. Everybody in the world has known about Myles Garrett since he set foot on an NFL turf, in 2017. They've never had other guys that can help him out. I mean, Jadeveon Clowney, they had him for 2 years, but Clowney's not considered a pass rusher. He just isn't. They traded for Zadarius Smith, the former Viking and Packer, and Raven, and he's a legit, like number 2 pass rusher. They brought in Dalvin Tomlinson, former defensive lineman with the Vikings and the Giants. Their linebackers have played really well. In their secondary, their corners are very good. I mean, I think you'd be hard-pressed, to be honest with you, to find another group of corners, top 3, that's as talented as the Browns, between Denzel Ward, a second-year kid named M.J. Emerson, and Greg Newsome, who was a former first-round pick. So that's where they can they stop the Niners? No. Can they keep them to 20 points? Maybe. It's not going to be easy, but that's the hope, right? If you're asking for a hope, that's it.
And the hope is for the Browns fans that Myles Garrett continues to beat the drum toward DPOY, which is currently held by Nick Bosa. How much fun is it, especially as a Browns fan, to watch Myles Garrett just wreck shop every Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, when he's, I was at the Tennessee game a couple weeks ago where he basically picked up Andre Dillard, who has not had a lot of success in this league. If people remember, he was a first-round pick of the Eagles and really couldn't get on the field. And now he's a Titan. I mean, but he's still 320 pounds. He would just pick him up and throw him back into Tannehill. And that sort of stuff is freakish. And he's so fast, and he's like Gumby with his ability to bend. Like, you can just throw him any direction, and you just don't expect the human body to move that way. So the Browns defense, I mean, that's, like I said, that's the encouraging sign. It just feels like even if the Browns defense plays great, I'm just curious where the points come from, if it's not like scoop and score or a special teams touchdown or something like that.
Chris Rose with us here, Willard and Dibs, 95.7 The Game. Chris, I hate to ask this. It feels obligatory, though, with the national conversation that has gone on with regard to whether he's good, a product of the system, blah, blah, blah. What's your perspective on Brock Purdy, the player?
I think he's pretty good. I really do. Now, the discussion that some people will have is, okay, how many more teams would he start on, right? Like, that's the fun chatter. Yeah, and I don't know if you could come up, I don't know if the number is 10 teams that he'd have no shot at starting on, but like last week, what would happen if the quarterbacks were changed between Dallas and San Francisco? Is the score closer than 42-10, or is it 50-7? Like, that's the question. I think it's unfair to the kid, to be honest with you. That's how I look at it. He has done everything that the team has asked. And so why are we punishing the last pick of the draft? I mean, the fact that he has started 10 games in the NFL as the last pick of the draft, to me, that's a major accomplishment.
Yeah.
Like, why can't we just accept it for what it is, which is a remarkable story that the kid's way better than we ever thought. I did last week's show with Daniel Jeremiah here at the NFL Network, and Daniel's our draft guru, and we had a discussion about Brock Purdy. I said the question was, and the only two choices are, does he get more credit? Should he get more credit or less credit than he deserves, or that he's getting right now? And he's like, he should get more credit right now. And that's the way he looked at it. And then I said, Daniel, you study everybody that comes into the draft. Did you think there was any way that this is what we'd see? He said, no. He said, absolutely not. He said, well, he talked to his coach, Coach Campbell at Iowa State, and said, this guy is just a winner. He is legit, and he throws the ball with accuracy. But still, you don't believe it when he's the last pick in the draft. So I'm just happy for him. I just hate it that we always feel like we need to pigeonhole somebody into something. And they have to be this, and they have to be that. And if they are this, well, then would it work over here and this, that? Let's just accept it for what it is, which is a tremendous ride.
Yeah, my partner actually came up with a term called draftism that he feels like, that we feel like Brock Purdy's being afflicted by, and that's just kind of the nature of being the last pick in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to ask the average NFL fan, did Tony Romo have a successful NFL career? Was he? What do you think most people would say?
They would say, I think no. They would say no, because a standard was created that he couldn't reach, or when the lights came on. You know what I mean? Like he didn't get all the way over the top.
Right. And he was a 9-figure quarterback, and he was a quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. Well, remind everybody what round Tony Romo was taken in.
Yeah,
exactly.
He wasn't. He was undrafted. So all these people were like, oh, my God, Tony Romo's overrated. Like, are you morons? What are we thinking about here? The guy did not get drafted, and he played for the Dallas Cowboys. You might hate it that the Cowboys ended up giving him a $100 million extension, but so what? Good for him. Jesus, like, let's just keep things where they should be.
Chris, who else do you see around the league that you think is on the 49ers level, if anyone?
Well, I do think that the Eagles can get there. They just haven't. They haven't this year, and maybe that's the scary thing for the 49ers and their fans is that we know Philadelphia's got it in them, and they're still 5-0, even though it feels like there's more to give. When I watch the Niners and they're 5-0, I feel like they've played great football. They really have. So I don't know what week it is, 12 or 13, that game in Philly.
Oh yeah, I think
December 3rd.
Which I think is week 12.
Week 13.
Week 13.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So we can't all wait for that. Like that's going to be unbelievable, and we're all super excited about it. It could determine, the 1 seed in the NFC, which is going to be huge. But as much as Seattle, I believe in them. I don't think that they can play with the Niners, certainly record-wise during the season. I certainly don't think Dallas can compete with Philadelphia. So you're looking at the top 2 seeds. Now, the one team I would keep my eye on in the NFC is Detroit. Daniel Jeremiah, I thought, had a great line about them. He called them the Niners JV in terms of the way they're constructed. And I thought that was pretty good. They've obviously drafted a lot of playmakers this particular year, but they have built up their offensive and defensive lines so that they're very much San Francisco-ish. Not saying they're on the same level, but when you play that type of team, like they're not going to be scared. I think they'll end up being that solid 3 seed. It wouldn't shock me if they end up with the largest margin of victory in terms of games as a division champion. And I think they'll be a fun watch in the playoffs.
Anybody in the AFC really got your eye? And Mark and I were talking earlier about Kansas City, and I know they've won a lot of games, but they seem to be doing it in an underwhelming, different sort of way. Who scares you in that AFC, Chris?
Well, Miami's speed does, right? It just feels like, my God, you're going to have to score 40 to beat them. Now, here's the thing. I think you can, because their defense, which should get better as they get some guys back, particularly Jalen Ramsey, but that's going to still be a little bit. Miami's interesting. I wonder if Kansas City doesn't make a trade for somebody to help them at the wide receiver position. It's still amazing to me that Travis Kelce gets as open as he does when they don't have anybody else out there. They do have one kid, a second rounder in Rashee Rice, who I think has got some juice, who's a solid player. Isaiah Pacheco has got some burst to him as well. But they just feel so reliant on that Mahomes to Kelce that at some point feels like they're going to need somebody else to make a huge play. And I don't know if they've got that right now. They still have time to do it.
Chris, go ahead. Yeah.
And one other team I was going to throw out there was Baltimore, because they're like, I hate doing the shoulda, woulda, coulda. Like we should be this record, but we're actually this record. I think that one actually plays with Baltimore, because last week I have no idea how they lost that game in Pittsburgh, and then they lost at home to Indianapolis and Gardner Minshew in overtime. But they're a team that could be dangerous.
Chris Rose is with us. I'd love to hear you expand a little bit on what you mean with regard to the Philadelphia Eagles and sort of their room to grow. And if you see any of that with the 49ers as well.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, Mark, is that I feel like Philly, even though they're 5-0, that they haven't played their best football. I just feel like they've gotten so many guys on that roster that have shown it. And, one of the many reasons I love those two teams, meaning Philadelphia and San Francisco, is just how they're built, right? They protect both sides of those lines. That's a big deal for both of those teams. You know, their executive, John Lynch, believes in it. Howie Roseman believes in it. Their coaches believe in it. So it just feels like Philadelphia hasn't played its best football yet. I don't know how else to explain it other than that. Whereas I feel like San Francisco, like last week, tell me one thing they didn't do great.
Yeah.
Score 50.
Yeah. They had a false start once.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had a false start, and their tight end got fined $13,500 for wearing a vulgar shirt.
Yeah, boy, that was so offensive.
And they fumbled at the goal line.
Yeah.
Should have been 49-10.
Yeah, you're right.
They had a delay game in there, too. Hey, Chris, just real quick, from the gridiron to the diamond, who's going to win this thing? And also, more importantly, how do we fix this cockamamie playoff format that is making it too tough on these 100-win teams?
Well,
It's a loaded question.
yeah, it is. It is loaded.
Thank you.
I don't think. Yeah. So here's the deal. Everybody complains about the time off, and that is a real thing. Like just with baseball players, if you ask hitters, 5 days off between seeing major league pitching as opposed to 3 days off, which is what the wild card winners maybe get, 2 or 3. That's a legit thing. That's not an excuse. That is legit. It can be both factually accurate and I don't give a damn. Like that's okay. So if you were to ask all the teams that receive the buys, would you rather play in the wild card round? They're going to say, heck no, I'd rather have the rest. I'd rather set my rotation, all that sort of stuff. So everybody says, oh, you're just using it as an excuse. No, I think there is some factual basis to it, but I don't see anything around it. If you're going to have 6 playoff teams, you have to have buys, unless I'm no math wizard, but you're going to have 2 teams that have to sit out the first round.
Right.
So, guys, there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, can you make the first round a 1-game wild card and then we get going on a Thursday instead? I suppose, but the whole reason they expanded the playoffs was for more money and more games. So that wouldn't make any sense. That's not what they're going to do.
Well, would the fix be to add even more games? What if I simply said that divisional round should be a best of 7? At least make it that you have to beat those teams 4 times instead of 3.
I can't wait for Game 1 of the World Series, November 21st.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be awesome, guys. I love it. And being a native Clevelander, that is perfect because I have been to a World Series game where it snowed.
Colorado or?
No, Cleveland.
Oh, that's right.
Cleveland.
That's right.
Yeah.
In 97 against the Marlins, I was like, I cannot believe this. This is really happening.
Yeah,
and it was snowing.
But
Yeah.
I mean, how long till we've got an 18-game schedule in the NFL? It's always going to be more.
Yeah, the difference is that weather factors into one sport and not another.
True. Yeah.
And that's kind of listen. Am I for shortening regular seasons and making playoffs more robust? Absolutely. Will it ever happen? Hell no.
Nope.
Because there's too much money. It's just not going to happen. So
Next thing you know, we'll have 64 robots in BattleBots expanding from 32.
Easy now. Come on. Don't be ripping on my show.
I love your
that
show. You know I'm a huge fan of your show. This year was as unexpected as any I can remember.
We're talking about BattleBots for those of us that don't understand that.
Robots fighting,
robot
Mark.
fighting
It's incredible.
Yeah, it was great. It was a great season. I know, listen, in the Bay Area, we have a huge population of people that love it and participate in it. So I know it's a big deal up there, and we love that.
Oh, yeah.
But the broadcasters are still humans, right? It's not AI.
Well, I don't know. Some of my critics might say I'm so generic that I could be a robot.
I know that's a real human in there somewhere, Chris. Thank you so much for hopping on with us, as always.
You got it, boys. Take care. Good catching up.
All
Thanks,
right,
Chris.
absolutely. That's the great Chris Rose, BattleBots,
Oh, I love it.
Jomboy Media. He's got the podcast, which is absolutely fantastic, and you know him through the years, Fox, MLB Network, and beyond.
Yeah.
The great Chris Rose.